When Viswanathan played this game in 2013, he said it was one of the finest games he had ever played. This is his 2013 game against Levon Aronian. This is one of the last games that Vishy played when he was still the world champion. And boy, what an incredible game. Only 23 moves, but really one of the greatest, most beautiful games I've ever seen. So Anand had the black pieces, Aronian with the white pieces, and Aronian starts us off with d4. After d5, c4, the queen's game on the board, we get the semi-Slav from Anand, Knight-f3, Knight-f6, Knight c3, and e6, all very standard moves, e3, Knight b, d7, and Bishop d3. And now that the white bishop has used a tempo to come out to d3, black now captures the pawn by playing d takes c4. And after bishop takes c4, the best move for here for black is exactly what the arrows show, just coming up and taking away that square from the white bishop. So after b5, bishop retreating back to that nice diagonal, we get bishop d6 from black, a nice centralizing move for the dark square bishop, basically controlling these weak squares around the king. We get castle kingside from both sides and queen c2. And the whole idea here is really to put pressure on black's kingside. But that's okay. Anand's going to continue with his development, and he plays the nice move bishop b7, putting the bishop on this nice long diagonal, a diagonal that we'll see will become very important later in the game. After a3 from Aronian, we get rook c8, just piling up on this pawn. This is always a great idea. Whenever you put a bishop, fianchetto bishop behind a pawn, it's a good idea to put a rook behind that pawn so that you can push that pawn forward and really make that bishop very, very powerful. And here, Aronian starts us off with the attack by playing a move knight g5. And what do you do in this position as black? You could play the move h6 and kind of repel the attack. And maybe the knight comes here, but there's not really an escape route for the knight in that position. And so a better move for white might be something like e4 and knight e4, and black wants to hold on to their dark square bishop, so the bishop might come back to b8. And this allows white a couple options. They can either trade, or they can play a move like b4 and really get a stranglehold over this c5 square with the knight eventually coming to c5, or even a move like f4 with a stranglehold over this e5 square. So a nice position for white. I think Vichy saw the h6 move and was thinking, I'd like to avoid that. You could also go the more tactical route, and Vichy could have played bishop takes h7, h2 check, and after king takes, knight takes check, and if the king comes back, then the queen would take the knight. The problem, though, in this position is after f3, the knight's coming back to f6, and there's a couple different things white could do here. White could, kind of advance to the center, but the better move for white would probably just be to play a b4, really control this c5 square, and with this c5 square under complete control by the white pieces, this pawn's going to have a hard time pushing, and therefore this light square bishop is going to be pretty bad for the rest of the game. So not a position that Anand wanted to be in, and so he did not play either h6 or bishop takes h2. Instead, he decided that the best defense was a good offense, and so he played c5. The whole point being, if you just look back at this position, which piece on black side really could be improved? And the answer is clearly this bishop. And so c5 is a really nice move to kind of do that a little bit, And it's the best move as recommended by the engine. And so what was the threat here? The threat here was that the pawn could come down. The threat here was that the pawn could capture, and that this knight would be pinned. But Levon Aronian, considering all those threats, figured that he still had plenty of time and opportunity to capture on h7. And so there's two ways you could capture on h7. You can capture with the knight, or you could capture with the bishop. Levon Aronian captured with the knight, but let's show what happened if you capture with the bishop. After bishop takes h7, you get king h8, and then maybe move like f4. The reason why you play f4 is because these are the two kind of monster bishops coming around your king side, and this is a great way to kind of stabilize this knight on this square and also block a bishop. So, but if we just think about what would happen in this position, after f4, maybe black plays a move like g6. Now this bishop is trapped. You're going to lose the bishop. You have two attackers on the bishop and only one defender. And so after bishop takes g6, f takes g6, you get the queen taking, and this looks really good for white. The problem, though, is that after queen e8, there's not really a clear continuation for white in terms of the attack. The attack's kind of petered out. You could play queen over with check, but in this position, white's out of checks, and white could pick off a pawn over here. But at this point, the attack's kind of petered out on the king side. A good defense by black. So I think seeing that, Aronian, not wanting to go into attack that's just going to peter out in a couple moves, decides to play the move knight takes h7 with a threat on the rook. And the move that Vish played is really a great move, and he played the attacking move knight g4. And you've already got two bishops going towards the king side, so why not add a knight? And the clear threat here is that white is going to play the move h4, be threatening checkmate here on h2, and also be threatening this this knight here. So what move did Aronian play? He played the f4 move, basically just shutting off the bishop coming to the h2 square, saying, I don't want any funny business on the h2 square. We get c takes d4 from black, and after e takes d4, go ahead and pause the video and see if you can spot the first brilliant move that Viswanathan Anand played in this position. So if you're able to find the move, congratulations. The move is bishop c5, a tremendous move. Vishy, realizing that this diagonal is extremely weak, and if he can get his queen, or his bishop or queen on that diagonal, it would be extremely advantageous for him. And actually, after the game, Vishy said that when he played this move, he saw just all of the kind of blood drain from Aronian's face, because he knew that Aronian was not expecting this. And so in this position right here, why can't white simply just take the bishop? Let's just analyze it. After d takes c5, we get knight takes c5, and now what do you do with this bishop? This bishop is attacked twice. If you come back to a square like e2, you get queen d4 check, and this gets immediately unpleasant for white if you play check here, and obviously we can go into the smother mate that we all know, right? And after the rook takes, you get smother mate. That's your classic Philidor's mate. And so after king h1, a better move for white would simply be, if we go back, a better move for white would simply be rook takes, and after queen takes, black's threatening checkmate. I mean, how do you defend against this checkmate? There's not really a good way to do that. You could play a move like bishop f2, but then the queen falls. So not a, and I should mention, black's also threatening checkmate here on e1. So after queen e1, bishop blocks, but then queen takes bishop checkmate. So a totally winning position for black. And so Aronian, deciding not to capture the dark square bishop, instead plays bishop e2. So go ahead and pause the video one more time and see if you can find the next great move that Vishy plays to keep the attack going. So if you found the move, congratulations. Vishy played the fantastic knight d e5, and this is kind of the classic tall principle. If you have one piece under attack, offer a second, your opponent can't take two pieces at once. And if we just analyze this position, this pawn is pinned to the king, so this pawn cannot take this knight. If this pawn takes the knight, we get queen takes d4 check, and after the king comes over, queen g1 check, rook takes knight smothered mate. So pretty nice for black there. Some nice moves by Vishy. So you cannot capture the knight with that pawn. And what if you capture the bishop with the d pawn? So queen d4, and after the king comes to h1, we get that kind of same sequence. And now we're back into this just disaster position for white, where black is just bearing down and there's really no way to stop it. So you can't capture either piece as white with the pawns. And so what Aronian decides to do is simply get an attacker off the board, and so he plays the move bishop takes g4. And then here Anand plays bishop takes d4 check, basically protecting that bishop by getting that pawn off the board. And after king h1, then he plays knight takes g4. So really well done by Vishy, just to establish complete dominance of these diagonals with his bishops. I mean, these are just two awesome bishops. And here we get knight takes f8 from Aronian, and Aronian figuring, well, you know, my pieces are in good defensive position on this side of the board, might as well do my best to pick off some material. We get f5 from Vishy and Anand. What Vishy was trying to avoid here is a scenario where, you know, for instance, after king takes f8, you get queen h7, and you know, there's a couple different ways this could go down, but let's say knight f2, rook takes f2, bishop takes f2. Then you can move like f5, e takes f5, and then queen h8. And so the attack could quickly peter out if the king comes up to e7. White can now develop with tempo, and you block here, check. The king has to come over to this diagonal, or even to here. And this is just a position that, well, I think black would like to avoid this position. So if we just go back, that's the whole reason behind, instead of taking this knight right away, black played the more kind of prudent prophylactic move, f5. So after f5, we get knight g6. And if you've been in these kinds of positions before, where you have just great attacks on your opponent's king side, it's really a race to get your queen to the h file, and that's exactly what Anand does here. He plays queen f6, and after h3, queen takes g6. It doesn't matter if the pawn captures here. This is checkmate. The bishop takes away the escape square, and the queen delivers check. And so the knight really is not under attack. So after queen takes g6, we get queen e2 from white. Basically, white saying like, okay, well, you know, I'll centralize my queen. I could always come up and pick this pawn off. And then Anand plays queen h5, and really anywhere on the any move on the h file would have been fine. I probably would have played h6 just to give absolutely no counterplay on this this e6 square. But after queen h5, let's just analyze what would happen if white captured the pawns. After queen takes h6, you get king h7, and there's really no more checks for white. What are you going to do in this position? You can play a move like knight d5, kind of blocking this diagonal. But then after a move like rook c5, this knight's going to fall. Or if the knight moves, then you just get queen takes checkmate, and that's because the pawn is pinned to the queen, or to the king. So queen takes e6 doesn't really work. You want to run out of checks pretty quickly. So in this position, white played the move queen d3. Makes sense, right? This pawn is under attack, and so you have to defend it as white. And Vishy played just a really tremendous move to end the game, and it was after this next move that Aronian resigned. Go ahead and pause the video one last time and see if you can find the fantastic move that Vishy Anand played to finish Aronian off. So if you found the move, congratulations, great moves in this game. Bishop e3, and this is just what a wonderful move. You cannot defend checkmate without giving up a queen. So if, for instance, the bishop were to capture, then you get queen takes h3. Again, this pawn pinned to the king, so you don't have to worry about the pawn. And after king g1, queen h2 would be checkmate. The knight takes away the escape square, and so you can't do that. If you capture with the queen, then you just lose the queen in the game. This is just, you could prolong the game simply by giving up the queen, but you're giving up your queen. And then there's really nowhere you could go to do the queen. The whole point of this move is that it blocks the queen from the defense of this h3 square. So an incredible game. This game was very similar to a lot of the games that Vishy Anand had played in his 2013 or 2012 maybe World Chess Championship match against Boris Gelfand. And it was said that during this game with Aronian, he realized that I had reviewed a lot of this for that World Chess Championship match, and he spent a lot of time in the game simply trying to recall the lines that they had learned. And he was obviously extremely pleased with this result in this incredible game. So this 2013 game with Vishy Anand, an incredible game, and probably Vishy Anand's greatest game, his Immortal. So thank you so much for watching this video. I appreciate those of you who continue to watch these videos and like, subscribe, share these videos with your friends. New videos coming every week. I'll see you guys next time.